Welcome, 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 and thank you for joining us on another episode of today's Electrical Estimating. As always, I'm your co-host, Chris Traumer, and I'm joined by my other co-host, Sal Huerta.
Hello, everyone.
So, Sal, we just finished up with our pretty detailed series regarding tariffs, which had a great response. I think Keith did an amazing job of, really digging into everything tariffs that's, going on now and has gone on and what can happen in the future. But, now we're sort of back into our regularly scheduled type of episodes, and we're starting a series of interviews with president of Vision Infosoft, Derek. People must be familiar with Vision because we've talked about them in the past. They're sister companies. They've been around forever. And I think you've had a great relationship with them over time, correct?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate that had been around the people who were the originators, who actually started the company way back when. Like you said, they've been around for decades and have always had an excellent program. Have obviously grown over the years to be a very important player in this electrical estimating space. Their products and services, meet a niche of what contractors are looking for. And so, again, the discussion with Derek, and like you said, the series that we'll have with him, it really does outline a lot of those things.
And Vision's estimating service, is it EBM? Is that correct?
Yes, the EBM is short for Electrical Bid Manager. So that's the name
And
of their software.
from our conversation, they got three models, something we've talked about in the past, or three versions, let's say, basically, a beginner, intermediate, and top notch, all the bells and whistles. And I think Derek will be alluding to that in the conversation that we're going to be having with him. In this conversation, this is something, as we've said in the past, and I've mentioned, I'm very new to this space, and it's something we haven't really talked to, and I don't really have a lot of knowledge base about, except for some general information, but that is change orders and how they are used within this estimating space.
What a change order is, it's actually a very important process of this. You don't want to have that. You want to be able to estimate and do all and guesstimate everything that's going to happen in a job. But once you're actually at a job and actually doing the work, there are scenarios that pop up that weren't originally thought of or wasn't planned in there. The conduit that has to go into a space that there's an air conditioning vent, things like that that you just didn't plan on having been on, not on the plan, so to speak. So that's where the change order comes in, where you have to say, okay, we have to modify this some way so that way we can make this work. Change orders also are in the past really have been really profitable because whereas you try to sharpen your pencil to get the lowest price when you're doing the estimate, when it comes to a change order, you can actually charge a higher price. Now, because of again, this wasn't planned, and then the work that needs to be done, as well as the products that need to be added to them, are normally at a what's called a list price or a column three price.
All right. Well, and I think Derek dives into that really well, into how Vision software can assist with the change orders, really what you were just alluding to, the increase in pricing and everything. Because obviously, if you're making a change, the job's already started, you're having to back away from your typical schedule to add in new things to the plans or change the plan. So it's all throwing off what your schedule is. So as you were saying, and I think Derek alludes to, having that higher price builds into the offset of throwing your schedule off pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely, and also, you start talking about, labor as we talked about in the past. That being the most important thing. Now you have to calculate for that. You have to bring another guy on the job site. Things like that that you didn't have factored before. That does go into that overall price.
All right. Well, let's not take up any more time. Let's just jump right into this. Let Derek explain it to us and how Vision and their EBM, or electrical bid manager, assist the estimators when it does come to change orders within their estimates set up within the program. So as always, Sal, great speaking with you. I'll catch up with you next time. Something that we had mentioned previously in our conversation a little while ago was actually change order management, because you were mentioning how in one of your, I don't know if it was the plus or the pro compared to a standard
Mhm.
for Vision, that it didn't have the change order capability. You could still do it, but in a different way. Could you talk a little bit more about that? The change order management, since it is essential for maintaining profitability. I mean, as I told you before, I'm new to this, so I'm
Mhm.
learning on the go while I'm talking to people. So, I mean, these guys probably have heard it before, but like, what is it that Vision's doing that handles change orders promptly and, is a benefit to the customer and makes their lives easier?
Typically, with EBM, you would create a change order against or under an existing job that you
Mhm,
bid. So it pulls in some of the information from the original bid. It's not a ton, but it pulls in enough like customer information, your contacts, and some of the defaults that you used for the original bid for labor or
mhm,
materials. But actually, let me take that back, strike that. The labor and materials is actually not pulled in because that's one of the that's one of the defaults for change orders is you tend to, or at least EBM's default, initially, which you can change, is it bumps the material price up and it bumps the, labor up. There's 3 columns of pricing not pricing, of labor,
mhm.
and typically you're bidding with column 1 or column 2, which is a little bit less. And when
Okay.
it comes to how many hours of labor per item, so every item is labored, and there's 3
Yep.
columns that are built in. The column 3 is typically called the NICA column, or not every item has a NICA labor unit, but and you don't normally use that when you bid a job because it's a little on the high side, and to be competitive, you're using column 1 or column 2, which is a few percentage lower than the NICA column. So to stay competitive in your bid, you're using column 1 or 2. In
Mhm.
the change order, you might be using column 3 quite often,
Okay.
and that's kind of your standard higher labor rate. And, when you're doing change orders, sometimes you're not gonna be as efficient because it's not part of your flow of your job. You're having to kinda jump over and say, "Okay, they wanna do this differently now." So you're
Mhm.
kind of covering yourself a little bit too for extra labor expenses.
Sort of
There's
keep that risk that you're taking by making this change while you're in the process of your project with that
Right.
change.
Right, so that's all built into EBM. So when you launch a change order, you're already by default using that column 3. You can switch that. You could switch it back to column 2, which will be a little bit less, and you can switch it on the fly on the change order. So you can create when you go to extend the change order, you can create 2 different extensions or bid summaries, as they're called in EBM. One column 3 labor, one column 2, and then look at them and go, "Okay, how do I feel about this?" You could also go with column 2 and add a factor percentage and kind of say, "I want that to bump up 10% overall or 5% overall, or a percentage on certain phases." And there's a lot of flexibility that you don't
Yeah.
have to do, but you can. Yeah, so that's one of the advantages of the change order, module, is having that flexibility of bumping up the labor. And some people some of our customers use trade price to go back to material pricing. The trade price, or is that also called column 3 sometimes, or the kind of the wholesale suggested rate, or anyway, they'll use the trade price. Typically, you will never use trade price, of course, on
Mhm.
a bid. You're using your supplier's price, or what we call target price, or the average industry price. Um, but you can use trade. In fact, in EBM, trade price is the default, so that's gonna be higher as well. Sometimes the contract you have on the job dictates what you can do and what kind of increases you can do, but not all the time, so that's something you need to look at when you get the job, or maybe even before you get the job. It's stipulated at how much they may have a ceiling of percentage increase on
Gotcha.
things that you need to follow.
But it seems like with Vision, you guys have the availability for them to put in the increase based off of what that cap may be coming off of their contract. So they could put certain things in there, but then also put in the percentage as well for them to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, and there's a couple other, or at least one other thing I wanted to mention is there's little, I guess, strategies that you can do that here and there, on the fly in the change order module when you're doing takeoff. Like if you're taking off parallel conduit, you can in your bid, you might wanna try to be competitive with that because your labor is gonna be a little less if you're running 2 conduit in parallel,
Mhm.
and you have the option to go standard or 2 parallel or 3 or 4 parallel to kind of tweak those efficiencies in your labor so that you're more accurate, but maybe you don't wanna be so accurate on your on your change order, so you keep that as standard labor, so you're not adding those efficiencies that you might typically experience.
Okay. So a lot of different customization within the change order. Now,
Yeah.
with that in Vision, is it you were saying it stays within the project, or
Yeah,
because with the standard, I know you said you'd have to sort of start a new bid because it didn't have the module as much, but this sort of just keeps everything combined as well. So it's easy for you to go from one to another and keep track of everything.
yes. Yeah, so
Got it.
we don't offer the change order module as a separate, à la carte item. I
Okay.
think so it you need to upgrade into the Plus, and that's how we've structured it, and it's worth it because you get other reports
Mhm.
are available in Plus, and there's some other things that you'll find in our comparison chart on our website.
Okay. So the other reports pretty much historical information. You can like look back to what you might have done or labor units on certain projects, things like that kind of thing.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do, off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly which reports are made available to you with Plus and Pro over. I know the price comparison, which is not really a report, but the fact that you can compare pricing from multiple sources all within one report and then choose which supplier pricing you want to
Oh,
go with on a particular job or change order, or you can say, "Hey, I want to take the best price from every supplier because I'm this is a highly competitive bid, and I
mhm,
want to make sure my price is as low but realistic as possible, even
mhm.
though I'm not going to buy these items from 3 different suppliers or 2 or 1." Um, I'm gonna go with that. So that's another advantage of what Plus or Pro brings to the change order module as well.
And as you said before, you can see the comparison between all three of them at
Yeah.
visioninfosoft.com. So that'll give them a complete breakdown there.